Alright guys, today we are going to be installing a new stereo into a 3rd gen Prius, that is the 2010 to 2015. Here is our stereo, and it's more than just a stereo, it's like a full infotainment system. You see we've got our backup camera to hook up here, we also have the GPS navigation, we've got our little mic there for when we are hooked up to Bluetooth. Now this is supposed to be pretty much a direct plug and play, but don't let the number of wires intimidate you here. I believe the wiring harness on the 10 and 11 Prius is a little different from the 12 to 15, so I think only about half of these are going to plug in. And like I said, it's a plug and play, almost everything here is going to plug in. I think we do have to splice into our reverse lights, but that should be the only issue. The first step is going to be removing the existing stereo, so let's do that now. Now, although this is an aftermarket stereo, the removal process is basically the same. The kit does come with a little plastic tool to help pop these up, but I found it's a little bit easier if you just use your fingernails and you get it under the backside here. We're going to take off this first panel, which is connected all the way up to here, and then the second panel up here, and that's when we're going to need tools to get to the stereo itself. So just kind of pop this thing up. And there's little plastic clips all along the way, and they're a little frustrating because you do have to give it a decent amount of force. But of course, you don't want to break it. It basically goes up like so. And then we have a few connectors we'll have to unplug. Once we have that off, next step is this top piece. Same thing. Go. All right, now I think this piece needs tools, if I'm not mistaken. I think this is connected to, yep, there it is, 10 millimeter, 10 millimeter. And then I think we need to pop that out. Okay, we can just dangle that off to the side. All right, yeah, 4 10 millimeters. Oh, okay. This piece was not connected to those. So there's one more piece that needs to come off before the 4 bolts matter. There it is. Okay. Let's see here. We've got our antenna, stereo hookup, and that's it. Cool. Now, if you had a factory deck, you would not have this piece right here. You would only have these connectors, which would plug into the back of your factory deck. So if you remember that big bundle of white connectors that we had over there, that's what's going to plug into these. There we go. And then this is going to probably run all the way over to my parking brake, which is pretty common on aftermarket stereos. So we may need that for this one. We'll find out. All right, let's go read the instructions. All right, well, these instructions leave a little bit to be desired, but that is good for me because that is probably why you're watching this video. So if you look here on the connectors diagram, it shows that you've got your main power harness, which is this one right here. That one plugs in there, and this is pretty straightforward. These wires are going to connect to the factory stereo. This is what's going to be what powers it on and what actually sends the sound to your speakers. Gets a little confusing over here. You have a few ports at the top, which correspond to right here. The only one I plan on using is this one all the way on the end, which is going to be for our backup camera. And then the other ones are for these accessories, which I'm not using. This one is mainly for video out and subwoofer control, which I don't intend on using. The external microphone, this thing does appear to have a microphone up at the top there. You see it says mic. And then when I look a little bit deeper in the instructions, it looks like this is just to get a little bit better sound quality for the Bluetooth. I don't talk on my phone in the car a lot, so I'm not going to hook that up unless I end up needing that later on. And then we have these 2 extensions here, which are USB extensions, which plug into those ports right there, which I don't have any need for. So that means that it's going to be pretty simple for me to hook up, but this is where it does get a little bit confusing. If we go over here to our backup camera, if you'll notice, this one right here, it shows we've got our yellow RCA style cable, and then we have 2 wires that come out of it. One goes to camera trigger wiring, the other one is to accessory. Unfortunately, I only have 1 wire that comes out of it. So let me separate these so you can see. Just have that 1 wire attached to the RCA, not the 2. And then on the other end, right over here, we have our backup camera, which has the yellow and the red, which is good. Yellow, red right here, no problem. The red, that connection right there, goes to that 1 wire. Well, I've got two wires on this. It's black and red, so it obviously looks like a positive and a negative, but that's not what it's showing here. It shows that it connects to this, which it does not, and then goes through here. And then if we assume, let's see, the camera trigger wire is going to be hooked up to the reverse lights. That means that our missing wire would be to accessory. So I may end up having to figure out a way to get accessory power extended alongside our RCA to our camera. So we'll cross that bridge when we get there. First things first, let's start to plug in this harness into our car to see where everything goes. All right, so we've got these four and then our antenna. So let's figure out what goes where. Set that off to the side there. Turn this back on. Ooh, that's cool. Dang. Well, let's see if it plays any music here. You gotta turn that off. It could be copyrighted. Dang. All right, cool. Let's figure out how to get that backup camera going. Okay, now we're on to the worst part, the backup camera. I'm not gonna lie, there's nothing fun about this. We have to find a way to get the wires from the back all the way up to the front as cleanly as possible. This back panel here, it just pops in. Unfortunately, it's one of those things where if you like pry really gently, you can end up like bending or breaking something. You kind of need to get like a good grip on it and then give it a good yank, and then it'll pop out. We'll have to pull off this back piece, and it looks like we've got another one here, and then probably the sides and then the back. Let's use the plastic tool that they gave us. There we go. And, cool. All right, so these are the little clips, and they are reusable, luckily, if you don't break any of them, which we did not. Now the factory backup camera, let me see, I don't know if you can see, but it goes, let me show you. So right next to our license plate lights, we've got this little plug. This is on the lower trim levels like mine. On the higher trim levels, it has a backup camera right there. If you have that, boy, you're in much better shape than I am. So what we'll have to do is mount the factory backup camera to that plug, and then we'll have to send this wiring through. So let me go ahead and pull the rest of these panels off. That would sound so sketchy. So two of the little plastic plugs popped off of this. I didn't pull it straight off. See if you can get the rest of them. Okay. Golly, so violent. All right, all those came off good. If you do have a couple of these plastic mounts stuck in here like I do, this is the tool that I use for them. I'll put a link in the description. This thing is awesome for removing these. To make the install of this backup camera a little bit easier, I decided to pull this back panel off. It was held in with 4 10mm bolts along with a few plastic clips. Once that was removed, I used a step-up bit to drill a hole in the back. I then protected that hole with a rubber grommet and sent the camera wiring through, and then mounted that camera to that back panel. Once that camera was mounted, I cleaned up the wiring a little bit just by zip tying it to the existing wiring, and then I connected the ground for our backup camera to an existing ground mount that was already on the back hatch there. I then fished my new wiring through the existing waterproof loom. It ended up taking a lot longer to do this process than I was hoping, but it did end up with a much cleaner look, and it'll keep water from getting into that hatch in the future. Alright guys, well I have made quite the unholy mess over here. Let me see if I can explain what's going on. This is our power harness. It's got a list of all the wires that come out of here. They are not the same color as the one that I've got. If you see right here, we've got pin number 5 is supposed to be pink. On mine, it's brown. Let me show you what that means. If we follow it over here into the vehicle, now that brown wire, which is supposed to be pink, eventually goes to this harness, which doesn't go anywhere. Now, I've had a 2012 and a 2014 model Prius. This is my first 2010. On those models, I have a lot more connectors. So my hunch is that if you have the 12 or the 14, well, I guess that'd be the 12 to 15, then you're gonna have more connectors over here, or it might be a trim level thing. So if you've got a higher level trim, this is a trim level 2. If you have a 3, 4, or 5, or maybe a 4 or 5, you might have this connector. If you have this connector, you should be able to just plug it in and it will give you the reversing signal that you get when you put the vehicle into reverse. Because I don't have that, what I'll have to do is cut this wire off and then connect it to this pink wire that we've got on this RCA cable. Let me show you why. Back to the back of the vehicle over here, that pink wire ends up right here. So I fished it all the way through, and I made it through this little connection here so it can be nice and clean. I will have to route it, obviously, through all of the trim. That comes later. If you notice, this pink wire is hooked up to two separate wires, okay? So the red one here, that's going to be the positive that runs through here to this other connector that then runs to our backup camera, which is mounted right here. Now that backup camera also has a negative. The negative side gets wired up all the way through here to this little ground that we've got. And then this pink wire here, the other connection, this orange one goes all the way through over here where I spliced it into the reverse signal right here. So for the reverse, I've got a red signal wire. That red signal wire meets up right here. I hooked it up. Basically what's happening is when I put the car into reverse, it sends 14 volts all the way through to this red wire, which goes to my backup lights. That red wire then connects to this, which sends power two places. First to my backup camera, and secondly to the signal wire, which is via the pink wire, which runs through this RCA cable all the way back up to the front. This is just an insane amount of work required, but unfortunately, if you have a vehicle that does not have the factory backup camera, that means that it does not have any of the wiring for the backup camera. So this is kind of what we have to do. Now I did go ahead and test everything. When I put it into reverse, the backup camera pops up on here. Everything is looking like it's working fine. So the next step is going to be getting all the wiring cleaned up. So what I'll do is have to pull off a little bit more trim, which is crazy, run it all the way along there, and then I can start to put all this trim back, all these pieces back, everything back in my trunk here, so that I can finally get it all cleaned up. And then we should have a backup camera. Now I've done a bunch of backup camera installs on vehicles and they're never easy. You either have to fish the wiring all the way around the trim like we're doing on this, or you have to go underneath the vehicle and then you risk having it exposed to the elements. So it just kind of is what it is. That's what happens if you have a car that you need a backup camera on that never came with one, or that you got a trim level that didn't come with one. Guys, I'm not gonna lie to you, that install was not fun. I was losing motivation, but it is all worth it. Let me show you why. So here it is from startup. I did go ahead and connect it to my phone. What I wanna show you, when I put this thing into reverse, check out the size of that backup camera. That is freaking amazing. And to go from having no backup camera to having this, look at that. I can just drive with this thing. It is super clear. And then when I put it into drive, bam, I'm back here. I do want to show you, let's see. There's video preloaded on here that shows, it's got some music too. It shows just how clear this screen is. Look at the size of this thing. So I can't show you all the features on this because I'm not an expert in Android Auto. I'm more of a install the unit kind of guy. It's going to take me weeks to figure out everything it can do. I'm sure there's other YouTube videos for that. All in all, the fit and finish is fantastic. You can see how clean it is. All of the edges, everything's great. The size of the screen, fantastic. The backup camera is amazing. Installation was horrible. Not their fault. It's just putting a backup camera into cars is almost always miserable. If you don't need to install your own backup camera, this is a 30-minute job, super easy, in and out. If you do have to install the backup camera, well, if you watch my video, maybe it's 2.5 hours or so. If you have to try and figure it out on your own like I did, golly, this thing took me probably 5 hours. So that's it. Thanks for watching. Hope this helped.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Bye-bye.